Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Very Best Balloon blog. Today I'm interviewing Stuart Davies from Beyond Balloons in Wales, UK. Stuart just did a recent job in London that was pretty awesome, but we'll come back to that later. So I'd just like to start off by welcoming Stuart and asking him to tell us a little bit about his business.
Thanks, Sue. Beyond Balloons has been going now for 4 years and 3 weeks. That's when I started with balloons. We're a small family-run business. We have a shop based in Tongarefo in South Wales, but we've produced work across the UK. When I first started looking at balloons just over 4 years ago, the shop wasn't in a very good financial position. I'd been involved with the shop for about 6 months then, and was supporting my family in seeing how they can take this business forward. And balloons was one of the areas I researched.
Wow. So you're based in South Wales, but you said that you do jobs all over the UK. So how do your clients find you?
With regard to the shop, we're in a small village. It's only about 10,000 people in the village, and in the area that we're from in South Wales, it's quite difficult to navigate geographically because there's quite a lot of mountains. But we focused our business on some key areas. I didn't want to have a scattergun approach to what we were trying to do. So for the first 2 or 3 years, it was about building a retail shop and providing really good, high quality displays. And then from there, the last 18 months, we've been looking at developing a wider client base and targeting bigger businesses. Predominantly, the shop uses Facebook. And then for the larger business work, I coordinate with other people. I develop partnerships, talk to people, see what potential is out there. And this was one of the returns that we had when Walt Disney International contacted us.
Wow. So what a fantastic client to have contact you.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, I can't go in depth into how we got that contact because we're still developing more work through that.
Sure.
But all I can say about that is actually building relationships with people inside the industry and outside the industry, and you'll never know what potentially might come from that. But yeah, it was we got contacted 10 weeks before the event, and we're asked to put a proposal together for them, which we did, and they accepted it.
So exactly what was the project that you were asked to do?
The project we were asked to do by Walt Disney International was the first Pride that Disney had ever been involved in outside of the US. So it was the London Pride Parade. It was a big issue for Disney. As I said, it's the first time they've ever done this outside the US. And they only actually ever got involved in a Pride. First one was in Los Angeles 3 years ago. So it's still early days for Disney with regards to Pride events. And they contacted us. I don't think they knew exactly what they wanted. So I had to come up with a number of suggestions and proposals for them.
So so how did you start with a project like this? What was your first sort of port of call?
My first port of call was YouTube. I looked at what they'd previously done in Los Angeles, Orlando, San Francisco, New York. There wasn't much I could take from those in a balloon sense. So then I looked in a wider field, and I came across the work that Tommy DiLorenzo had done with Duet as part of their Pride Parade promotions. And that gave me a spine of work that I actually could work from and then develop from there.
So are you able to share what was in the planning process? How did you go about planning what you did?
Yeah, I think for me, planning starts at the very end. And what I tend to do with planning is I visualize the end product absolutely completed. So then I would call that Z, and then I would work back through all the stages to be able to get to A, where it's the actual first introduction meeting with the company. So that process of visualization I've used throughout my career, and there was actually two areas that I needed to visualize. One was the end parade, and then I was thinking about the environment, the area that they were walking through, Disney's policy with regards to helium outside of their buildings, and a number of other things, which then kind of limits your design brief. But secondly, how and where do we create this amount of balloons? Because eventually we used about 13,000 balloons, and finding the appropriate place in London and being able to create the balloons there and then transport them to the start point was another area I had to visualize and work backwards through, and think about all the intricacies of how that happens.
Wow. So there's a lot involved in just that sort of planning. What about preparation? How long did it take you to prepare, do you think?
The designs itself, it was quite a simple design brief that I created. I think the more complex you make it, the more difficulties you cause for yourself. And also, aesthetically speaking, I wanted to have a single image that was replicated. So looking at the kind of design, the principles and elements of design, and trying to keep that kind of systematic use of a singular item. And I chose Mickey Mouse's head because everybody can relate that to Disney. So we created that out of 3-foot balloons, but we did it 50 times. So we had 150 3-foot balloons. The ears were only inflated to approximately 18 to 20 inches, and the main balloon was about probably about 2.5 feet. But what we did then was we incorporated that into the color system of the LGBT flag. So using that to anchor everything else, we then incorporated some more flow and some more kind of flowing designs that you could use outside. A festival, a parade, anything outside is fundamentally different than inside. But then the added difficulty of it actually moving as well. So you haven't just got the outdoor elements, which you don't have to think about in the room, but you also have to think about how does this work with a human being? How will a human being make this work? And also how you get that flow between all of the parts within the whole. And I think we pulled it off. It was like a tsunami of balloons. But because we stuck to a very simplistic grouping of designs, it was very impactful visually.
The script that you did with the Disney logo was stunning. How complicated was that to make?
It wasn't as complicated as you would think. Depending on whether you've actually used aluminium rod before. We use a similar system to anybody else who uses aluminium rod for doing lettering. The only difference is it was Disney and we had to get the Disney logo perfectly right. So for instance, the S and the N in the Disney letters that we created were about 2.5 foot square, or just under a meter square, whereas the D was 7 feet square, which is just over 2 meters square. So there was a huge difference in sizing. And you also had to have the consideration of this wasn't just being hung or placed, it was being carried for, it left the building at 11:30 and it was finally put to rest at about 7 at night. and it was a very hot day. So all of those considerations had to be taken into account. But we used 4 different sizings of balloons, 3.5 inch, 3 inch, 2.5 inch, 2 inch, to create the shaping around the aluminium rod. So I think it was one of the most successful elements within the design. I think it was all successful, but that was one of the most pleasing ones because of the comments from other balloon artists as well.
It did look fabulous, absolutely beautiful. And we'll be showing lots of the photographs from the parade in the blog as well. So the sort of crux is, what reactions did you get from the public and from the Disney representatives that were actually on the parade to the balloons? How did you feel that they reacted to them?
There was a number of different reactions. Some of the reactions I'm going to give you are from third hand, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the first reactions we had were from Disney volunteers, because we took the weird and strange step of actually involving Disney staff in inflating all the balloons, and they inflated about 5,000 of the balloons themselves, which meant we had to train absolutely from scratch how to use a balloon and inflate it within a 3-hour period and actually come up with products that were going to work in this environment. It was exciting, that element, and actually seeing the Disney staff coming in and getting excited by balloons was amazing. And their reaction when you consider they work with Mickey Mouse every day was just, oh, I can't believe this. It's just, you know, it was just one of the best experiences of my life. But then on the event itself, I was actually marching. So I couldn't see what other people were thinking of the actual, the balloons itself. But from what I was told from other people, there was people screaming Disney before they could hear the Disney music, because they could see the Mickey heads. Now, the Mickey heads were designed specifically to be seen about 100 feet away. So they were about 16, 17 feet in the air. Now, when you've got 50 of those being held and bobbing up and down, it just created that anticipation, and people were just screaming Disney, 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 prior to us actually getting to them, and then them hearing the music and seeing the Disney dancers.
Oh, it sounds absolutely amazing. You must have had a huge sense of pride from that feedback.
Yeah, I had a huge sense of pride in a number of ways. One, I think the actual Pride Parade is hugely important in this country, and in every country that is held. And being part of Disney's first ever involvement outside the US in a Pride Parade, it was quite profound for us as a group, I think. But then also seeing Disney people who, let's be honest, Disney people work with magic. They work with magic every day. The things that they do, the level of organization in Disney is just second to none. And from my point of view, forgetting about the balloons, they comment about how well organized we were, and how prepared, the impact we made was much more satisfying to me than the actual balloon displays in the end, because that is what Disney is about. Disney is about perfection. There is never anything wrong with anywhere you go with Disney. It is just so well prepared. So,
okay, let's get back to the nitty gritty. So what do you think you've learned from doing this job, and is there anything that you would do differently in the future?
One of the things I always do after a large job is I interview everybody that was involved, clients, other balloon artists, member of my own team. And I think it's extremely important to have those interviews, and also to ask them to be honest about their feedback, because otherwise you're not going to learn and take into account future changes that you would have brought in. I think one of the things we absolutely nailed was the preparation. We had, prior to all the balloon artists turning up, we had all the tables set up. We had all the designs in large print on the wall with pictures. Everybody knew what they were doing from the first minute they walked in. I'd have bigger speakers because the music from my phone wasn't loud enough. That was the biggest complaint for the day. So yes, speakers would be a good one. And I would, the next time I would do it, and this is across the board, I didn't put any thought into the post-event work. And that's really important. Contacting the client, thanking the client, sending a gift if necessary, if you think that's appropriate. Where do we go from here? We've done this event, and all that work was there. I did put a week aside, but I hadn't put any thought into what do I need to do. And I think that's an area that I need to consider more, not just on big clients, but from every single client that we speak to, whether we just given them a bouquet, where is our follow-up on that? You know, was it satisfactory? Did it make a difference to you? Was the customer service good? What can we do for you in the future? So whether it's a £30 or a $40 bouquet or a £15,000 job, thinking about what I'm going to do for that client afterwards and how I interact with that client afterwards is extremely important. So that's my learning point.
No, I have to say I totally agree. It's very easy to do a job, walk away, and not follow up afterwards. And potentially that's a future customer. And on lots of the conversations that I've ever had, if you deal with a client, for example, for a new baby being born, potentially that's a client for a long, long time because you've got so many future events with that particular person. So regardless of who it is, it's or what the client is, it is important that there is always that follow-up. So that's a fabulous point. What qualities do you believe are important for someone to be successful in the balloon industries? What would you suggest that they need to do?
Something that I've always been in every career and job that I've had is being self-critical. Not to the point where you're putting yourself down, but being able to critique what you're doing yourself, being able to critique your own work, being able to critique my input into a project, and then thinking, how can I improve that for the next time, and what do I need to do to improve that for the next time? And I think that's extremely important. I think the two, you hit part of the other thing that I was thinking of, the balloon business, and people concentrate on balloons but don't concentrate on the business. And for as much time that you put into practicing and preparation with balloons, I think you should put 5 times as much time into business, because that is what's going to get you the work in the future. It's the marketing, it's the preparation, it's the sales work. It's all the outside bits and bobs that have got nothing to do with balloons, which we have to do if you're going to be successful. Lastly, I would say ask questions. Ask questions of yourself and ask questions of other people. How did you do that? How does that work? Go on as many training courses as possible. And, always keep looking to develop yourself as an individual, not just with regards to balloons, but also with regards to the other aspects of business.
I was going to ask you about some to share, if you could share some top business tips, but I think you've covered lots there. So I think that they're all really very valuable. So you're coming to WBC next year, yes?
I am.
So would you like to tell us a little bit more about what you'll be doing at WBC?
I've been invited by WBC, by Pioneer, to create the decor for the welcome event. It's been entitled Catching a Wave to Success, which I think is quite apt for the WBC because it is it is like getting on a wave. When I went to the last one in New Orleans, and the amount of information you take on in a week, not just from the classes, but to talking to other balloon artists, other people that are in a similar or have been in a similar position that you are at that present time. I can't say much about the decor. It's in a very big room, which is probably the biggest area that I've ever decorated. It's somewhere in the region of 20,000 square feet. So that's challenging. There's a number of challenges in respect to that, in that you try and, a welcome event is very intimate, and yet a large room isn't very intimate. So trying to get that inclusion of people, and also doing something in front of your peers. There's 1,000 balloon artists there who all have their ideas of how they would decorate a room, and this is going to be very personal to me. So I've tried to stick true to what I tend to do, which is I work on very simple designs because they're profitable, and trying to encompass a wider range of areas that are linking to the actual welcome event. So I have got a brief which I've sent through to WBC, and that's being worked on at the moment.
It sounds very exciting.
Yeah, that's one word. Scary is another. Yeah, what am I most excited about with that? Probably not so much the balloons, and it never is so much the balloons. It's the working with other people. It's the sharing of ideas, the sharing of thoughts. Someone coming up to me on the morning and saying to me, "Have you thought about doing this in a different way?" You know, that's what events like the WBC are great about, because people see the world in different ways, and your way isn't always the best, and being able to pick up on those ideas and take them forward in your own business is something I'm really, really looking forward to.
Okay, so we're just going to finish off on a very fun question. So I'd just like you to tell me what your favourite Qualitex balloon is and why.
My favourite Qualitex balloon and why? The 16-inch balloon. Because no one uses it. I use it quite a lot. I use it within deco bubbles. I don't know if this isn't fun at all, but it's just the most practical balloon that I can find. When I use it inside deco bubbles, it provides a much rounder shape within a deco bubble. But I also use it to cover lots of balloons to be able to do raisins easier. And it's a really effective balloon for being able to do a lot of complex work. So not fun, but it helps me do fun things.
No, that's a really good tip, really. I mean, I completely get where you're coming from. I always tend to upscale the balloon that I'm working with if I want to do a lot of techniques into it. So that's a fabulous tip. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for sharing your experience on the Pride job. It was a phenomenal job, and it had lots of reaction on Facebook, and I'm sure you're extremely proud, and congratulations once again, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Sue.